Okay, cognitive and difficulty level. This is one of our biggest major issues, and it intimidated the heck out of me. I didn't get it, but I get it now. It's not that difficult. I wish someone would have sat down and explained to me the 4 levels. It's not that bad. We're going to look at it as much as we can today. I really want you to feel confident with the cognitive levels because it's one of the most major aspects that we are moderating. Okay? It's one of the most major aspects that make an assignment, that make a test equal to the final exam. In standard, okay. So we get, there's 4 cognitive levels, but let me first just explain it like this. Every question that a student will encounter in the final exam is, each mark is allocated in 2 groups. That mark is once allocated in a cognitive level, which means what faculty of his understanding is he applying, and it's also in order to get that mark, and it is also categorized in a difficulty level. How difficult is it? Okay, we get 4 levels, 4 cognitive levels. I'm going to refer to them as level 1, 2, 3, and 4 later on, and just to make it a bit shorter. And then we have 3 difficulty levels. Let's start with the difficulty levels: easy, medium, and hard. Okay, a mark that you are going to get, doesn't matter which cognitive level it is either going to be easy, medium, or hard. You do get hard level 1 questions. A knowledge question can be hard. It can be difficult. Some of you might teach physics. There's a lot of difficult knowledge questions in physics that it's not the common knowledge questions, but it is knowledge questions. It's the recall of information. And then it's just not common or regularly asked. It's for that individual that went a little bit further and studied a little bit deeper. Same with maths as well. There are more difficult knowledge questions. I can't think of something right now, but I'll explain the knowledge questions in just a minute. But obviously, so every mark, whether it's level 1, 2, 3, or 4, can be easy, medium, and hard. Level 1 will mostly be easy and medium. Level 4 will mostly be difficult. Okay, probably medium to difficult. But in my opinion, or actually in Prof. Heinemann's opinion, there's very few difficult questions. He very seldom assigns something too difficult, but come on, he's professor at the UCT, so that's not really fair. So I do think we should just slack what we think is difficult a little bit lower and look at it not from the student's perspective, because then everything will be difficult, but rather from a fair perspective. What would we consider as really a difficult, a challenging question for most candidates? Or let's say the average 50% candidate. What will be difficult for him? And what will be easy for that candidate? Okay, so then what we get is our 4 level questions. I now talked a little bit about the difficulty levels. The 4 levels that we have is knowledge, routine procedure, complex procedure, and problem solving. Now I'm just going to briefly explain, and then later on we'll look at, I produced a document that I think is going to help you tremendously. Okay. Knowledge questions, first of all, it's those questions that students can look at it and know the answer. You understand? It's a cognitive skill like driving. You almost don't think of you have to go into second. It is something that they recall because it's imprinted in them. So it can be a theorem, for example. They have to recall a theorem. The inside angles of a triangle adds up to 180 degrees. It's things that they would almost naturally can complete, the average or the above average student. Your knowledge questions are also those mundane routine procedures like solving a quadratic equation. That they should be able to do without thinking. You should know x squared minus x minus 6. You should already know that negative 6 should break up into negative 3 plus 2. So it's mundane things. So that would be your knowledge questions. Okay. Your routine procedures are basically the work that they routinely do in class. That is the exercises you show them on the board, the easy example, not necessarily the easy examples, but the routine things. So for example, find the equation of the straight line. Okay. Sorry, something I forgot at knowledge. Any calculator work is knowledge questions. If they have to punch it into a calculator and press recall the standard deviation or whatever, that's knowledge questions. That 4 marks they get for getting the regression line, that's 4 marks for knowledge. Okay, that's, yeah, and maybe not easy, maybe medium. But routine procedures are those things that if we look at our CAPS document, let me quickly go back there. If you look at your CAPS document when you're teaching, it gives you an outline of what you're teaching every week. There's an outline of that, and then I'm going to go in here. Grade 11, for example, drawing a histogram is a routine procedure. Okay, drawing an algorithm depends. It can be a complex procedure, depending on. If I explain complex procedure, you might understand when will something be routine rather. So, what a complex procedure is, that's now level 3, is when you start combining different aspects of the curriculum to answer a question. So, for example, if we do a algorithm, but we give you the frequencies, not the cumulative frequencies, and you first have to get the cumulative frequency and then you can draw the algorithm. Do you see? I first have to do this, then I do that. Then it's usually complex procedure. A complex procedure is also when you have to start interpreting. So one aspect of the complex procedure is when we start combining themes. When I, for example, have to simplify a fraction, and that fraction involves compound angles. And after I've applied my compound angle, now I have to factorize, and then I have to cancel. Do you see? I use factorization and compound angles in a question. So I'm combining different themes, algebra and trig, to answer a question. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from different topics, like algebra and trig. Like I explained now, if I first expect them to do this before they can do that, it starts becoming complex. Now, if we say complex, we don't mean difficult. I mean, applying a compound angle just like that, it's easy, just apply the compound angle and I have to factorize, that's not difficult. So it's not necessarily to say that a complex procedure is a difficult procedure. Okay? It's just not routine, it's just not the simple apply the compound angle here and get the answer type of thing. Okay, so do you have a few questions? We'll really look at this a little bit more in depth. And
sorry, so an example that you used for level 1 for knowledge was solving a quadratic equation, and then for level 2 routine procedures you said finding the equation of a straight line. So I'm just like,
okay.
To me
So
those
no,
are
perfect.
very similar.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes, finding the equation of a straight line, but
in my
it's
opinion,
also
be
knowledge. No, it's also knowledge. Definitely. But at grade 12 level, it's knowledge. Grade 11, it's routine procedure. Okay. It depends on what are you expected to be able to do here. What I should have said is finding the equation of a tangent line, or finding the equation of the tangent to a circle, or finding the equation when you use the theory for grade 11 or 12. I used to say just the theory of grade 12, but the problem is there's a lot of grade 11 topics that we don't do again in grade 12. That is just like graphs in general. We don't really redo it. So yes, so thank you very much. Definitely. A mundane procedure is finding the equation of a line when you get 2 points, or you get a line that okay, maybe a line parallel that's and perpendicular maybe, but it's a little biased. Yeah, it is, but what I mean, it's not mundane.
Yes.
It's actually in those grades it's actually complex, because now you use the fact that you first have to find the gradient by another means before you can apply it. So it's not difficult complex, but it's this, then that. It's not this routine, I do these steps just in order and I'll get to the answer.
So that could then be something like an easy complex.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Not in grade 12.
And how do you,
in grade 10. In grade 10, when I'm just starting to use it.
How do you decide how many difficult, easy, medium questions has to be in your, because I know what my cognitive levels has to be.
Yes. My recommendation is that it is symmetric. So if all of yours is medium, it's fine. But I would recommend have some easy questions and the same amount of difficulty questions. So there's not a prescribed way, but my recommendation is that it is um, distributed evenly. So, and if the, and I'll show you, I really hope I put it on here. I forgot this morning to check. I've made a little Excel document that I really think works very nice to actually, and we'll look a little bit on how should I set a test or an exam using cognitive levels. Here's one of the biggest problems teachers do. They set a test and then they go do a cognitive analysis on that test. You can't do it like that. You can't have an outline and then you go and try and fit your test that you've already done to fit your, now you just tick, okay, where do I still need something, which one can fall under that? That's not the intention. We're not trying to fudge the results. What we're trying to do is produce this curve, whatever, or this distribution. And as I look at my test, I look, well, which mark do I still need? I still need something in algebra, and I still need a knowledge question. So let me go find an algebra knowledge question. And it's not difficult. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of work, but it's not difficult. Okay, so any questions on level 1, 2, and 3 so far? We will really look at some examples, and I think you will be confident, and I think we'll look at last year's. I don't have the exam on PDF, and I don't have enough exam papers for us all, so we'll look at the prelim exam, which was a very high standard. In my judgment, it wasn't a very good fit. It was in the higher levels, but that's not a bad thing. Okay, so anyway, level 4. Level 4 is the one that it seems like teachers have the most difficult to understand. What is the problem-solving level? It is not word problems. Get that straight. The level 4 is not word problems. Some word problems may be problem solving, but for example, if I look at the standard finance question, it's a word problem. And it's routine. Most of the time it's routine, except if they ask you something like calculate N in that formula, the annuity formula. Now all of a sudden I'm using logs. That becomes now two aspects. I'm now using logs as well. That becomes a little bit complex. Not necessarily difficult, a little bit complex, do you understand? But it was a word problem. So just putting a word problem on, okay, I need problem solving 15% in my test, so let's go, there's finance, nice. Okay, I've got my word. No, not at all. Very, very few questions. For example, a problem-solving question, well, let me first explain what a problem-solving question is. A problem-solving question is that question where the student needs to have insight before he can answer. There's something hindering him from applying the knowledge that he knows. So even your best student that can do all of your questions should get to a knowledge question to a level 4 question, and he will have to stop and think. It's interesting that our probability, the last topic, is almost all of them problem-solving questions. It's not difficult, but you have to stop and think about it, and that's what makes it a problem-solving. I first have to solve a problem before I can apply my theory. I want to show you in the CAPS document why I love it. And I complained to Prof Heidemann, I don't know when is something, this is now long ago, when I first met him. I don't know when something is knowledge and when something, and I say, I wish there were more examples. And to my utter... yes, he showed me. Look here, here's knowledge, routine procedure, complex procedure. Here's wonderful examples all throughout your CAPS. So here they give us the topic on the side that we're dealing with, roughly the things that they should be able to do. And here's examples. Calculating the distance. You see, this is grade 10. I mean, it's usually when it's a normal, using the formula substitute, get the answer, it's a knowledge question, okay? So calculating the distance, such routine, mundane procedures. Finding the coordinate of the midpoint, since that is something that we just start using in grade 12, it's grade 10, it's a routine procedure. Determine the coordinates of S if PQR is a parallelogram. So now we're busy with analytic geometry, but we have to go and fetch our theory of parallelograms and an understanding there, and then use that somehow to find a point for, there's N. PQ. Oh, find the coordinates of R. We got R in the previous question. Very often, when you have to base your question on a previous question, it's either level 3 or level 4, because first this and then that. Okay, here's not an example of it, but I want to show you actually the grade 11 I thought was a brilliant example of problem solving. Let me just see if I can find it quickly. Here we go, this one. Should I zoom in a little bit? Can you guys see? Yeah, you have to simplify that fraction. That's now in grade 11. And I think it just explains the idea of problem solving so well. You have to simplify this expression. And so most students are immediately intimidated by that. And probably most of them just cancel there and put it 3 years up there. Okay, so in this, you can see it's not a word problem. It's problem solving. Why? Because the student has to have insight into 9 being 3 squared, and then recognizing, oh, that makes this the difference of 2 squares, and I'll get one of those brackets will be this bracket. So it's a beautiful grade 10 question, I think, that explains. And now listen what they say here. This is problem solving, assuming this type of question has not been taught. The moment you have taught a student to do a certain task, it's not problem solving anymore. Which means we can't teach problem-solving questions. The moment a student has seen a question, you can't assign it to problem-solving in a test.
But then, so my procedure with the grade 12s last year was to try and find as many of those.
Yes.
So is that good practice? Before finals, we went through so many past papers to try and find really different kinds of problem-solving questions that would come up, especially for training things like that.
It's probably the best, but my recommendation would be, it depends on your students. If you don't have 80 plus students, don't do that to them. Because the problem is we're trying to get them to pass with 50s plus, and I promise you, I believe everyone can get 80, but not everyone wants 80. Okay, if they did, they'd work as hard as those that do try and get 80. So yes, but don't do that to your group. I won't recommend you do it to the group. Do it to those individuals and give them as many. But here's again, from our assessment perspective, that's from a teacher's perspective. How do I prepare my students? You do what you think is best. You are qualified for that. I don't want to prescribe what you should do. But from an assessment perspective, a problem-solving question, you must think out. It must come from your head, not from a past paper, not from a textbook. It should be something that that student has never seen before. Because if it's likely that he's seen it before, then it's not problem-solving anymore. You understand? So that's a very important aspect to problem-solving. Okay. Now it doesn't mean there's not questions that's like that. I had an interesting problem-solving question. So that's what I do every time there's these little things that are happening. I'm trying to work out that there's 2 routes I can get here. And the one route's longer, the other one has more robots. So I'm trying to work out the average time it takes me to get here using the shorter route now, so that I can test it for the longer route. So now in my head I'm keeping this calculation. So the one day it takes me 3 minutes this way around. It shows you how close I live. 3 minutes this way around. The other day it takes me 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes, and 4 minutes again. So I've now added up these values, and now I start forgetting the values. But I remember the average that I had. So I worked out, I can't remember, the average 3.75 or something. And so the next day I drive to work and it's 5 minutes. And then I go and add those values together and divide by 2. I'm getting a new average, take my average plus the new value and just divide by 2. Is that correct? Okay. No. So here was a good problem-solving question. And so what do? I go to my Word document where I save my problem-solving questions and I go type it out in a question. Peter drives to work. So there's a lot of questions that start with Peter drives to problem-solving questions. Drives to work, and it's now the question. It's a question in which I'm asking the student, is this the correct calculation? That's a level 3 type question, because now he has to. Level 3 also has to do with assessing whether it's when you have to. interpret an answer, that's level 3, but because that now uses a more complex understanding than just routine. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But so there's a level 3 question, and now level 4 question is to calculate the correct average. So not unless they understand how average work, they won't be able to do that. So that's my recommendation for you to just get assessment. There's another website that I love. It's called Stack Exchange, Math Stack Exchange. What it is, it's you get one for teachers as well. So what it is, people that have math questions ask it there, and then other people answer it, and then you get like a rating. Oh, my rating went up a little bit. So and then if people like,
How's your rating? We want to know.
it's not very high. I'm not that active. There's people with thousands and thousands. But what's nice is you answer a question, and then if someone likes your answer, they ask a question. If they prefer your answer, you get 10 marks, 10 points. And then other people can vote up your answer and you get that as well. So it's really very nice. But you know what source of problem solving questions these are? Because that's exactly, these are really challenging questions. And you don't necessarily have to put it in that challenging way, but it's really a very good source of complex questions. So, you know what's the weirdest thing? I never understood, where are we going to use this second line, a parallel line drawn to the third side divides the other two sides in proportionately. The first 3 questions I answered on here used that theorem. I was blown away. It was the one question was, it was beautiful. The one question was, how can I fold a paper in 3 perfectly? Easy to fold it in half. How can I fold it perfectly in 3? And someone suggested a means to do that. Very cool way of folding this paper. And so another person responded, why does this work mathematically? And the answer was, that I'll maybe show you a little bit later if you're interested, was exactly that. So it's such a wonderful investigation question actually, for students to show them this, and then they have to explain why does this work mathematically, and they have to go and find the answers somehow. Okay, we'll get more to that, but this is for me a nice source. Every now and again I just go on. You'll see in the time that we will be here, there'll probably be in the next 10 minutes 4 questions asked. So I mean and it's a great place for you to ask, but there's a teacher's one as well. I'm not very active on that one. I only found out about it recently. It's a little bit more, should students get full credits for getting math educators? I think if you do Stack Exchange, it's like a bulk, and then you get science and maths and computer studies, a lot of things. Not South African. But that's a good source for problem solving questions. Here we can just see what this distribution is supposed to be in all your tests and exams. You should have this distribution. If you don't follow this, then the minimum is this. In other words, this is your lower order. Ooh, sorry. This is your lower order, level 1 and 2, and your higher order. If you are a science teacher, it works very similar. I struggled with science because I wasn't trained as a science teacher, but I teach science now, and so the science works very similar. It's also your knowledge questions, your routine questions. Basically here, there's a little bit more theory, so they can ask it slightly different, and there's a few action or verbs that you can use as well. But your complex procedures in science is usually your 5-mark questions, where you first have to go and calculate the future velocity of something, then you use that future velocity as the initial velocity in another problem. And for science, it's not necessarily problem solving, it's deeper understanding, like really understanding the theory and be able to apply it. So I don't know if that's helpful for someone. But the minimum that I'm trying to say is that your level 2 must be 45%. Okay, so even if you are now a little bit lopsided, at least the least your higher order should be is 45%. Okay, so in other words, between these two, it should be 45 or more. So even if it's a little bit lopsided, and don't go much higher than 20% for knowledge. So what I'm trying to say is if you are going to lopside your tests, make it more difficult rather than easier. Because in the end, we don't want to inflate students' marks. Okay, so whenever you set a test, you have to follow this distribution. And the way that you therefore have to set a test is you have to have a cognitive analysis grid. I do. There you can see, is Auxilio here? Auxilio. So when I moderate your paper, I use a grid and I put it in there, and I won't open it in front of everybody. I don't know if it was good.
I want to see how you moderated.
No, I'm not. That's why I asked so you hear. If you weren't, I would have done it.
Last year we got our math papers from not such a reliable source.
Oh, that is one of the biggest problems. So
we now have writers in. So we that actually teach do not have anything to do with setting the paper.
Is it?
And that helps.
I don't know. Are you sure? Because our biggest problem, our biggest problem is actually the providers. And so we want to encourage the teachers to teach. And I promise you I'm a better teacher since I've started setting my own tests. Because I'm trying to get my students prepared for the final exam. If I know how they're set, what questions fall in where, I'm better able to identify questions there. I just want to show you, this is and I'll make it available a little bit later on, what an analysis grid looks like. So you can see here, I'm going to try zoom out. I'll make this one available for you and I'll explain how it works. I can't remember if it's later in the course. Here is this specific paper. This is now just on the top so that you can quickly see it. This is what what you do while you set this test. This is what's recommended. Sorry. This is as I put in the values. Let me just see if this test is complete. That's only 92 marks. So this is probably one, it was a control test probably that I was in progress with. I can't remember where it comes from. But so you can see here, and that's maybe a good way of doing it. Just quickly see. Now this is an old one. Sorry, I just want to find the grade 11. This is the grade 11 cognitive distribution for the grade 11 paper last year. I set it, so this one I know is fairly accurate. So you can see here, here's the recommended marks out of 150 of marks that should be knowledge. And in setting that paper, when I start setting a paper, I always start with problem solving. So I go and look at the 22.5 and I go to every topic and I try and think up a problem solving question for that topic. And then I go, if I get stuck a little bit, I move on to the next one. So that's what I do first. I try and get my problem solving questions first. And do as many, and usually I get more than I need. So that when I take away later on, I can take away, I don't have to go and look. Then I go to my level of my complex procedures, okay, because they are also more difficult to find and to put together. So I go to every topic and do one complex procedure for every topic. And I'm going to, you'll see all of this is earlier on as later on as well. And then I go to my knowledge questions, and I try and find a few knowledge questions. And then all the marks that I still need, I fill up with routine procedures because that's the easiest stuff. I just go to a book that you can take from a book, go to a book or and just take out a question from this topic. And so you'll see as you're doing this, what this little Excel document does is the whole time it shows you what you need to adjust. And so a red arrow would mean you'd have to go down a little bit. So you can see I had a lot of marks, maybe 9 marks too much in the complex procedures. These slightly high, or slightly low, and then slightly low. And as I'm working, I can see which adjustment is, so I'm basically finished. I've got a bunch of questions, and then I see which area do I need questions from, and it does the same thing here. It automatically puts them in the correct topic here as well, adds it up. So I usually go and look. Let me actually delete something here, and then you'll see. So here I can see, while I'm setting my test, that I need to find a pattern, sequences and patterns question. My distribution here on easy, medium, and hard is fine. In other words, that it's already symmetrical as it is, so that's fine. It can be probably a medium question then, just to keep the balance. And then I see I need to get some knowledge and knowledge and routine procedure, level 1 and 2 questions. So now I go and I find a level 1 and 2 medium question for number patterns. So that's how I set this. And in the end, when you think up a question, you just give it its number, say in what area, what topic it is, give it its marks, and then say what level it is in, and choose its difficulty level, and these are automatically populated, so it gives you that. I think there, if you put, it won't work now, but if you put 2 in there, it also changes. No, it doesn't. It's supposed to. But the one that I make available is if you change paper 2, changes those topics to what topics they should be on. Probably. So, but more about this a little bit later on. What I'm trying to show you is your cognitive analysis is not an afterthought. It's the starting point. It's what you start with. It's what you fill out while you're doing your test. So if you put a test in that file without a cognitive analysis grid, you haven't done cognitive analysis, okay, in my opinion. So, and that's going to be a major aspect of it. Here I just quickly go through difficulty levels that we've discussed, I think, enough here. Can you see there's already three questions asked there on there? So, okay, so here's the CAPS addendum that I created on the next page. I think that will be very helpful. That is, and it was it's very helpful to me. CAPS addendum.
That you made up? Or
yeah. So what I did
awesome.
is that I literally went to every topic, and in grade 10, what will be your level 1 type questions? So this is really, if you now know, okay, I have to find problem solving questions, because that's where I'm starting with when I'm setting my tests. Let me get this PDF. So these type of things are a little bit biased. There is disagreement between different people. So do take this as my opinion. But I think it's fairly accurate, and you'll see, because again, the biggest problem is the problem-solving questions. I cannot tell you this is an example, this is a problem-solving question, or this is for this topic. I can give you examples, but the moment I've used that example, you can't use it. Do you understand? So it is an example just to give you practice into recognizing the problem-solving questions. To be honest, I've even grown a little bit in I might disagree now with what I would, when I did this, and what I would say is a problem-solving question now. But just let me just quickly show you how to use this document. So, for example, in algebra, grade 10, 11, and 12, our algebra topics in grade 10 and 11 is very vast. In grade 12, we basically just do logarithms there. So, a simple application of rational exponents would be a knowledge question. So you'll see basically what I've done is a knowledge question in grade 12 will basically be knowledge when it's grade 10 and 11 routine procedure work. Okay. Then by grade 12 it should have been practiced in so much that they should be able to do it without really thinking about it. So you can go and look there. I just want to show you more or less what is the routine procedures. Because now I can tell you, when you ask rationalize the denominator, In grade 12, that would be a routine procedure. Why? Because there's not something equivalent in grade 12 that we do new. It's something that they still have to, they can't do it just out of their head, for example. They have to go through the steps. Completing the square, solving an equation that simplifies to a quadratic equation. So not a quadratic equation, solving an equation that simplifies to a quadratic equation. So for example, an equation with fractions in it, okay, with an unknown in the denominator. So solving quadratic simultaneous equations, okay, that used to be a big topic pre-CAPS, where there's simultaneous equations, one of them is quadratic. Solving inequalities that simplifies to quadratic inequalities. There's always one like that, okay? So these are the type of things that if you have the grade, and I work mostly with them. I work with students that had 9% last year and they want to pass. So I'm not going to focus on level 3. I have to focus on these type of things. I must make sure that they can, each of them tick, oh yeah, I know what it means to rationalize a denominator. So I think printing this for students is great. They can definitely make use of it, but then again, you're not allowed to use the problem solving examples there, okay? So there's literally what I've done is I've gone and used the CAPS document. I've used various resources. I do think that's very, very thorough. Some of the examples of problem-solving questions I didn't think out. I had to get it from textbook because it's not that easy to think it up. Okay, but you can then work through there, and I would really suggest that when you do classwork, do the routine procedures. Once you've finished a topic and done the routine procedures, move on to, okay, now let's step it up a notch. Let's go into third gear and let's put these two things together and do complex questions. How can I now address these questions? I think what we often do is we quickly go through a few and then we want our students to be able to get 70% by focusing on level 3 questions. And they're just blown away. They just, I don't get this math. Just focus on the routine procedure. I promise you, if you go and look at the last year's June exam, if the first thing they did at every question, not June exam, the final exam, first thing they did at every question was a routine step, they would have done 80% of that question paper. If you go back to basics, you can really answer most of the questions. Okay, so you'll see there, I just followed the similar way. If it was a question with multiple, so these are examples, and if there were questions with multiple, examples with multiple questions, I would just indicate what I would think this is a knowledge or a problem-solving question. Okay, any questions so far on the cognitive levels? It's really important. Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to check whether I understand what you're saying about this. So the cognitive levels are supposed to help us when we set tests, maybe for purposes in class and also for submission to SACAI. And then you said you need analysis when you submit the test to SACAI.
Yeah. And just so that you understand, what I'm saying is that when you set a test, you should use this grid to set the test, not set the test and then fill out the grid afterwards. Yeah. So.
And then also, do you agree that the classification of these questions is subjective? Because someone might think this question is routine, if someone thinks it's complex. So how critical are you when you analyze?
Definitely. I would, when I analyze it, I would give it the way I think it should be done. And I will commend you for your efforts, and if I strongly disagree, I would say, I think go and revisit what you classify as problem solving. Right, so no, I 100% agree, and that's what the Malusi moderators always tell us, is don't come down hard on people because they understand it different than you. Commend them that they are attempting this and doing a good job of it, some people. So no, definitely it is subjective. I think we should have a mutual understanding of most things, but there are things that I would think would be a lovely thing to debate about when we have that time. Thank you, sir, for your question. Anything else on this? Okay, I must say I'm enjoying teaching much more now that I use this. I think I'm a better teacher.